The sun was high and hot over the red plains of the frontier world, burning the skin of anyone who dared to travel under it. Jackson, a human cowboy, tightened the strap on his wide-brimmed hat and wiped sweat from his brow. He had been walking all morning, scanning the dry, cracked soil with a practiced eye. His boots left deep impressions in the dust, and his fingers traced the ground, searching for signs that water or life could be nearby. This planet was harsh, much harsher than the deserts of old Earth. But Jackson had spent years learning to read the land, to find what others could not. He carried his tools in a worn leather bag: shovel, pickaxe, small trowels, and a few containers for water. He had learned to trust his instincts above maps or signals. Today, something felt different. The wind whispered across the plains, shifting the dust in a strange pattern, almost like a warning or an invitation. Jackson paused and knelt, running his fingers along the ground. There was a faint vibration, a hollow sound under the soil. He straightened, eyes narrowing. This was not ordinary desert. There was something hidden beneath his feet. Jackson sank his shovel into the earth and began to dig. At first, it was slow work, the dry soil resisting every strike. But he kept at it, sweat dripping from his face and soaking his shirt. With every shovelful, the ground seemed to change slightly. There were tiny fragments of wood, hints of metal, and strange symbols etched into buried stones. Jackson's heart quickened. He had stumbled upon something very old, something that had been forgotten for decades. After several hours, his shovel hit something solid. He knelt and brushed away the dirt, revealing a reinforced wooden hatch, weathered but strong. His pulse raced as he examined it. The hatch was carefully constructed, not a natural part of the ground. Whoever had built it had wanted it hidden. Jackson's fingers traced the carvings along the edges. They were simple but precise, telling a story he did not fully understand. He pushed against the hatch, and with some effort it creaked open. A rush of stale air escaped from beneath, carrying a faint scent of smoke and herbs. Jackson held his breath and peered inside. The space beyond was small, dimly lit by a single narrow window covered with a thin layer of dust. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars of dried herbs, tools, and personal items. There were blankets folded neatly in one corner and a small fire pit in the center, blackened with soot but clearly maintained over time. And then he saw her. She was sitting on the floor, hunched over a small woven mat, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders, her eyes wide with surprise and fear, locked on Jackson's face. She was a human-looking woman, but there was something in her features that marked her as different, stronger, tougher, someone who had survived harsh times and harsh people. Her clothing was simple but practical, worn and patched from years of careful maintenance. Jackson froze, hands halfway raised, wanting to show he meant no harm. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said quietly. "I was just digging. I didn't know anyone lived here." The woman studied him for a long moment. Her lips pressed together and she shifted slightly, placing herself between him and the small entrance. She was cautious, ready to defend herself if necessary. But there was also a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked softly, her voice steady but wary. "Jackson. I'm just passing through. I'm looking for water, for shelter, for signs of life." He paused, then added, "I won't take anything. I just want to make sure this place is safe." The woman's gaze softened, though she did not relax. "My name is Nayeli," she said. "I've lived here a long time. I keep to myself." Jackson nodded, understanding. He had met many like her. People who survived alone, learning to trust only themselves, mastering the harshness of the world. He stepped slowly inside, careful not to frighten her further, and examined the small shelter. There was a sense of history here, of someone who had preserved memories and culture in isolation. Every jar, every tool, every blanket told a story. "Why here?" Jackson asked, genuinely curious. "Why not stay near a town or a settlement?" Nayeli looked away, her fingers brushing the edge of a small carved box. "This place is hidden. People leave me alone here. I don't have much, but I survive. My family, they're gone. The war, it took them. This is all I have left." Jackson felt a pang of empathy. The universe was cruel, and he knew the loneliness of the frontier. "I understand," he said quietly. "I've seen loss too. But you're strong. You've survived out here alone." She glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly, testing him. "Most people would have left. They wouldn't last a week here." "Maybe," Jackson admitted. "But some of us don't give up that easily. Some of us find ways to make the impossible work." For a moment, silence filled the shelter. Then Nayeli sighed, leaning back on her hands. "You're different from the others who stumble upon this place," she said. "They usually come looking for trouble or treasure." "You seem honest," Jackson offered a small smile. "I've learned that being honest is the best way to survive. Lies only make enemies faster." Nayeli studied him for a while longer, then nodded slowly. "You can stay for a little while, but you must respect my rules. You can't touch my things and you can't leave the door open." Jackson agreed without hesitation. He felt a strange sense of relief. Here in this small hidden shelter he had found not just safety, but a chance for connection. The desert was vast and people were rare, but sometimes the rare encounters were the most meaningful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shelter grew warmer from the small fire Nayeli had kept alive. Jackson helped her tend the fire, and she shared her simple meal of dried fruits and roasted grains. They spoke of survival, of the land, and of strange stories from other worlds. Jackson told her of the planets he had traveled to, the storms he had crossed, the dangers he had faced. Nayeli shared stories of her family, of the war that had taken them, and of her life alone in the desert. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common. Both had learned to read the signs of the world around them, to adapt quickly and to trust their instincts. Both had faced loss and loneliness, yet both had survived. And slowly a bond began to form, a bond built on respect, trust, and the understanding that humans, no matter how far from home, could endure anything. Night fell, and the desert outside became a dark, endless sea of stars. Jackson looked up through the narrow window, feeling the vastness of the universe pressing against the small shelter. Yet inside there was warmth, a sense of safety, and the faint stirrings of hope. Nayeli sat beside him, quiet but watchful, her eyes reflecting the starlight. They both knew danger still lurked. Raiders and scavengers roamed the desert, and the harsh world outside was unforgiving, but together they had a chance to survive. Jackson had opened a hole in the ground, but in doing so, he had opened a door to trust, friendship, and the beginning of something neither had expected. As they settled in for the night, Jackson thought about how strange life could be. A random dig, a hidden hatch, and suddenly he was part of someone's world, a world filled with resilience, history, and courage. Nayeli, too, felt a small spark of hope. For the first time in many years, she realized that survival might not have to be lonely. Humans could connect, trust, and help each other, even in the most desolate places. And as the fire flickered and the stars shone above, two humans from very different lives found themselves united by circumstance, curiosity, and the unyielding human spirit. The morning light spilled over the desert, painting the red plains in shades of gold and orange. Jackson stretched, feeling the stiffness in his muscles from yesterday's digging and the long journey across the harsh landscape. He glanced at Nayeli, who was already awake, moving quietly around the shelter. Her movements were precise, almost instinctive, as she checked the fire, the stored supplies, and the small trap she had set around the entrance. Every action reflected years of surviving alone in a world that did not forgive mistakes. Jackson stepped outside, brushing the dust from his pants. The air was dry and sharp, carrying the faint scent of distant rock and sand. He scanned the horizon as he always did, searching for anything unusual. His eyes caught a glimmer of movement far off near a cluster of jagged rocks. He squinted, trying to see clearly. Could it be animals? Or maybe scavengers looking for easy prey? Jackson knew better than to ignore even the smallest sign of trouble. Inside, Nayeli emerged, holding a small basket of water and food she had collected from hidden streams and secret caches she had maintained over the years. She saw Jackson and nodded silently, acknowledging his vigilance. The desert was unpredictable, but together they had a better chance of surviving. They began reinforcing the shelter. Jackson took his tools and started digging trenches around the entrance, creating a simple barrier to slow down any intruders. He also built a few concealed pits and placed sturdy branches across weak spots. Nayeli watched him work, occasionally offering advice about the terrain and where to dig. She explained the patterns of sandstorms, the paths of predators, and the safest routes to travel if they ever needed to leave the shelter. "You know," Jackson said as he worked, "I've been to many planets, faced countless dangers, but something about this place, it feels different. Harder, lonelier, but alive in a way I can't explain." Nayeli glanced at him, her eyes thoughtful. "This desert teaches you everything. You respect it, you survive. You ignore it, and it kills you. Many people don't understand that. They think the desert is empty, but it's full of life if you know where to look." Jackson nodded. I can see that. And I can see why you've survived here alone. You understand this place in a way I never could in my travels. Their work continued through the morning and into the afternoon. Jackson and Nayeli moved efficiently together, their efforts complementing each other. He dug, built and reinforced while she guided, shared knowledge, and monitored their surroundings. Slowly, the shelter transformed from a hidden refuge into a secure outpost, capable of withstanding attacks or harsh weather. As the sun climbed high, Jackson noticed the movement near the jagged rocks growing closer. A group of raiders emerged, riding strange mechanical beasts. Their machines kicked up clouds of dust as they advanced, scanning the plains. Jackson's heart raced. These were no ordinary scavengers. They were organized, dangerous, and likely searching for hidden settlements like Nayeli's. He signaled to Nayeli, who immediately understood. Together they moved quickly, using the terrain to their advantage. Jackson directed her to a concealed tunnel he had started digging the previous day, one that led to a hidden vantage point behind a ridge. Nayeli grabbed a small sling and rock she had prepared, ready to defend herself if needed. The raiders reached the shelter and began examining the area. One of them tried to pry open the entrance, clearly expecting an easy target. Jackson and Nayeli held their positions, waiting for the right moment. Jackson's eyes met Nayeli's, and they nodded to each other. This was a test of patience, strategy, and courage. Suddenly, Jackson dropped a small rock into the path of the raider's mechanical beast. The creature stumbled, causing confusion among the raiders. Nayeli took the opportunity to launch rocks from her sling, hitting their equipment and forcing them to retreat momentarily. Jackson then triggered a simple trap, a pitfall covered with loose sand which swallowed one of the mechanical beasts. The raiders cursed and scrambled to regroup, but Jackson and Nayeli used the chaos to slip away through the hidden tunnel. They emerged behind a ridge, watching the raiders struggle. Jackson wiped sweat from his brow and smiled slightly. They underestimated us, he said. Nayeli nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and admiration. Humans survive because we think ahead. They only react. The two spent the rest of the day reinforcing the shelter further, making it even harder for anyone to find or breach. Jackson showed Nayeli new techniques he had learned from frontier worlds, while she shared secrets of the desert, hidden water sources, edible plants, and safe sleeping spots. Their skills combined to create a formidable defense. As evening fell, they finally sat down by the fire. The sky was a deep, velvety black, dotted with countless stars. The desert stretched endlessly, a silent witness to their efforts. They shared a simple meal, eating quietly while listening to the distant howl of wind across the plains. Jackson broke the silence. You've taught me a lot today, more than I expected. You survive here not because it's easy, but because you understand it. And I respect that. Nayeli looked at him, her face softening. And you've taught me something too, that humans are clever, resilient, and capable of surprising strength. I didn't think anyone could help me here, not really, but you make me feel like we can survive anything. They sat quietly, letting the warmth of the fire and the companionship calm them. For the first time in many years, Nayeli felt a sense of trust, not just in Jackson, but in the possibility of connection. Jackson felt it too, a bond formed not by chance alone, but by shared struggle, respect, and the unyielding human spirit. The next day, they began exploring beyond the shelter. Jackson was curious about the ruins he had discovered while digging, and Nayeli wanted to show him hidden paths and secret places that only someone who had lived in the desert for decades could know. They moved carefully, scanning the horizon for dangers and sharing knowledge along the way. Jackson admired Nayeli's skills. Her ability to move silently, find water in the driest places, and anticipate dangers before they appeared. Nayeli, in turn, respected Jackson's ingenuity, his quick thinking, and the way he could adapt to any situation. Together, they were more than survivors. They were a team. One afternoon, they stumbled upon a small canyon with signs of life, tracks of creatures, remnants of plants, and a hidden stream. Nayeli smiled, pointing out the subtle clues she had learned to read over the years. Jackson knelt by the water, testing it for safety, and nodded. "This will help us," he said. "With this, we can last longer and defend the shelter even better." As they returned to the shelter, the raiders appeared again, more organized and determined. This time, they had brought more mechanical beasts and seemed ready for a serious attack. Jackson and Nayeli prepared themselves, using every trick, trap, and hidden path they had. The battle was tense, filled with strategy and quick thinking. Rocks, pitfalls, and the terrain itself became their weapons. The raiders struggled, unable to overcome the combined ingenuity and knowledge of Jackson and Nayeli. One by one, they were forced to retreat, their machines damaged and their morale broken. The desert returned to its quiet state, the threat gone, for now. Jackson and Nayeli looked at each other, exhausted but victorious. They spent the following days repairing the shelter, strengthening defenses, and gathering resources. The events had brought them closer, forging a deep bond. They spoke less of fear and loss and more of hope, survival, and the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. Jackson realized that the hole he had dug had opened more than just a passage into the shelter. It had opened a doorway to trust, companionship, and a chance for a new life in a harsh world. Nayeli understood that the human beside her was not just a passerby. He was someone she could rely on, someone whose courage and ingenuity matched her own. As the sun set once again, painting the sky in brilliant colors, they sat together outside the shelter, watching the desert stretch endlessly before them. The raiders were gone, the danger had passed, and for the first time they allowed themselves a moment of peace. Jackson looked at Nayeli and smiled. "We've survived this far," he said. "I think we can survive anything now." Nayeli nodded, feeling a rare sense of calm. "Yes, together we can." In that moment, they understood something fundamental. Humans, no matter how far from home, no matter how lonely or lost, could endure. They could fight, adapt, and thrive. And in the vast, unforgiving desert of this frontier world, they had found not just survival, but trust, companionship, and the beginning of a new journey. The hole Jackson had dug had revealed a hidden world, a hidden life, and a hidden connection. And in the endless desert under the stars, two humans had proven that resilience, ingenuity, and courage could overcome even the harshest challenges. For Jackson and Nayeli, the frontier world was no longer just a place of danger. It was a place of opportunity, hope, and the enduring spirit of humanity. They would face whatever came next together, confident that they could survive and thrive against all odds.